Welcome to something a little different, I'd say. So, to break up the monotony, you could say almost, of my Metroid Prime 4 Let's Play and also my occasional Warship Wednesdays post, which I'm going to attempt to get out tomorrow. That is Christmas Eve, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to try and do something a little different, a little Star Wars-y, a little pretty simple, to be honest, in terms of content. I'm just going to do a tier list here. Throw my hat into the ring of putting out my opinion on Star Wars, which is certainly a choice given how the Star Wars fandom is. But I like to try and be positive about things, so this is not going to really try and be bashing on any specific series or anything like that, or trying to be super negative. I'd rather be positive on things. I'm also very positive about Star Wars as a whole. I am a massive Star Wars fan. Just recently, as of when I recorded this, I posted my most recent podcast episode on the Thrawn trilogy, specifically the Thrawn Imperial trilogy, which is the new canon Thrawn trilogy. There's two of them, though, is the only problem there. But it's the novels are Thrawn Alliances, and Thrawn Treason, which, if you haven't listened to my episode, go do it. I would love the listen there. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartRadio. It's a play-by-play review is my podcast. You can obviously find it here on YouTube. But yeah, it's I did a whole hour half plus talk on those three novels in particular, which I really enjoyed. Those are incredibly underrated, and I would highly recommend go checking them out. They're very well written. Really, anything by Timothy Zahn is very well written, especially when it comes to Star Wars. And so I figured I'm in the Star Wars mood at the moment, so I figured I'd continue on that little trend here and actually, introduce the topic that I'm going to be talking about here. Although, hopefully, I create a correct title for this video that actually says what it is. But I'm going to be ranking on a tier list where I think the live action shows that have been released by Disney, because those have been the only live action Star Wars shows, official, I should specify. Like where I think all of them rank on a tier list. I'm sure it's been done before, probably thousands of times at this point, but I'll throw my hat into the ring. While we're kind of in a bit of a down period in between live action Star Wars shows, we have the Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming out in 2026, I think in May. I don't remember for sure, but that's like the next thing on the Star Wars docket, essentially. But other than that, it's really Ahsoka season 2 is the only thing that's like confirmed to be in the works, but we don't know when that's coming out. That's to be determined, or according to Wikipedia that I have over on my other screen, to be announced, which is basically the same thing in this case. But anyway, there's been enough Star Wars shows that I think it can fill out a good tier list. I mean, you can see it's 9. And this is including specific seasons, not just the shows themselves are only 7, but Mandalorian has 2 seasons, Andor has 2 seasons so far they've been released. So, or Mandalorian has 3 seasons actually, I should say. So yeah, it's actually 10 if I can actually count correctly. But yeah, anyway, I'll stop the preamble. I'm going to do my best to be objective about this. I am someone who grew up on the prequel trilogy and Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So, like, if I threw Star Wars: The Clone Wars in here, that would just be S tier, S tier, S tier, S tier. But no, actually, I would actually have to be objective about that. But I am someone who likes Star Wars more than dislikes it. There are a few things in Star Wars that I would say I dislike. And even, some of these shows that are definitely not nearly as good as the others, and people are certainly going to expect, who have seen the shows and are probably, coming up with their rankings in their own mind, would be placing some of these shows, cough cough, The Acolyte, in the lower tiers. I still have good things to say about even shows like The Acolyte, but I will get to that later on because that's one of the more recent ones. Or we'll start with The Mandalorian season 1, which I believe is this poster. And The Mandalorian season 1, I think it's a very, very solid A tier. Like, what a start to this sort of new era of Star Wars. Like, for a show that I think had pretty small expectations. I mean, it was coming off the sequel trilogy. It came out in 2019, like end of 2019. and that's like pretty recently after Rise of Skywalker. And uh, I'm certainly not the biggest fan of the Rise of Skywalker. I'm not its biggest critic, and this is not delve into Rise of Skywalker in specifically, but let's just say that the sequel trilogy left a lot on the table and certainly was divisive among the Star Wars fandom, even more so, honestly, than from what I can tell the prequels, because the prequels, for all their faults, still kept a good amount of the Star Wars fan base around. The sequel trilogy certainly didn't. And for The Mandalorian going into uncharted waters, I mean, it's the first like major live action Star Wars show in existence. And, in a time period that in the new canon hasn't been covered all that much, and like immediately after, or like pretty soon after Return of the Jedi. I know that's been covered to death in the expanded universe, but in the new canon, there's a lot to be determined. I think this show, or this season specifically, stuck the landing incredibly well. Pedro Pascal delivers a great performance as Din Djarin. The whole mystery of Baby Yoda, since we didn't know his name was Grogu at this point, was fantastic. Like that, the ending shot in the first episode with Din opening the little space carriage and finding little Baby Yoda, little Baby Grogu, and them like touching fingers to like connect with each other. What a perfect ending shot to just set up the season. Like you almost immediately know what the rest of the season is going to be about, because you kind of get how Din Djarin operates throughout the first episode, and the setup is like, oh, this get like if you're a Star Wars fan and you see a child version of Yoda species, like exactly what you're going to expect, or at least like what you think you're going to expect, and then exactly like what Din Djarin's job is now. And it's like perfect setup, no notes. And that's not even to discount the rest of that pilot episode. I haven't even like rewatched that episode probably since it came out. And like it's still, a lot of it is fresh in my mind. Like him going through the cantina, his little one-liners that he has. Like you see exactly how Din Djarin operates with his ship, the Razor Crest, which, by the way, awesome ship. I actually am not super unhappy with them bringing it back in the movie, at least from what we've seen, because like it's spacious enough that like it houses everything. Like it has the little carbonite freezing thing for bounties. It's got like all of his equipment, a little bed area, and it's got weapons as well. It's perfect. It's just like it. They did an incredible job at designing the Razor Crest, and like Navarro is, as the season goes on, is a great location for much of the show. Like you get a good glimpse into the Death Watch and their culture, and how it is basically just a cult. Like it's not your typical Mandalorians. Like they are fanatics. And the late great Carl Weathers, rest in peace. I'm so sad he has since passed away, because he was fantastic as Greef Karga. Like what a joy to watch him perform in that show. IG-11 is also a really fun character in the few episodes we got in season 1. They got Werner Herzog in there, which is absolutely crazy. Like I said this in my podcast episode on the Game Awards, which happened fairly recently when I'm recording this. But like Werner Herzog shows up in the latest Warframe trailer in that. And so it's like it seems like he's just randomly showing up in like various sci-fi and nerdy stuff. Like I know he voices a character in like Rick and Morty, I'm pretty sure. And like him in Mandalorian, and then now in Warframe. Like, what is this guy doing and all this stuff? But he delivers a great performance in the few episodes we see him. And I'm not trying to like go episode by episode through these, because that would make this episode way too long. But I just have a lot of praise for season 1 of The Mandalorian, because it's a condensed story, despite Din kind of going all over the place in the galaxy. Like he doesn't just stay on Navarro, but it's still very much a story that just follows Din and Grogu. Like it's their journey as they slowly, like Din slowly grows out of Death Watch's shadow, and like he learns more about how the galaxy operates. We get a glimpse into post-Empire, like the galaxy post-Empire essentially, and how there's still holdouts. We see how a little bit of how the New Republic's doing. Like they brought in freaking Bill Burr to play a bounty hunter, and he was great. And I'll get to him more in a little bit when we get to season 2. because he's even better in that season. But like Cara Dune and her character is a really good little addition, and really just like the whole season was just crafted incredibly well. It's a very condensed story, and I think it works for the genre they were going for, like the space western genre, because I'll talk about like how season 2 and season 3 really expand the scope of the story for The Mandalorian. And while I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, it's like there's good and bad, but I'll get to that later. It's for season 1, the condensed story really does it a good service um, for how they wanted to tell the story. And I think the story that they told through the 8 episodes that they had, I think, was paced well. Like there are some episodes where like it definitely was a little slow, but even then it still felt like worth it to go through them to get to the end. And like the climax of everything with the fight against Moff Gideon in Navarro, and the team up with everyone at the end, and like IG-11's sacrifice, and just everything going on in that final episode, and especially the reveal at the end with Moff Gideon having the Darksaber, like perfect in like cap to the season, while also setting up enough for the next season. Like it stuck the landing incredibly well. Like it shot out of the gate really fast, stuck the landing incredibly well. I know I'm kind of mixing like athletic terms, but you get the idea. Like very, very solid A tier. Like there are few things wrong with the show, and an incredible start. Like there's a reason why. Well, there are multiple reasons, but there's a good, it's understandable why The Mandalorian was so popular when it started out. Now then, to season 2 of The Mandalorian, because that's actually what came out next, which is this poster, I believe. Now, The Mandalorian season 2, I like this season a lot. I'm still going to put it in B tier because while I do like it a lot, I acknowledge that it didn't quite live up to the same expectations and the same level that season 1 put on. And I'm pretty sure this is the season 2 poster. It's one of these two. I think this is the season 2 poster. But The Mandalorian season 2, as I said a little bit earlier, it expanded the scope of the story a lot more than season 1. Like the season 1 was very condensed, pretty much just following Din and Grogu the whole time, with like them basically going on adventures and running into the occasional other minor character along the way. Season 2, it takes it more. It's like Din is actually in a galaxy with other people who have other things to do. Like the story is not solely revolving around them anymore. And it starts out kind of the same, but like really once you get to, I think it's episode 3, when he goes to meet Bo-Katan, that's when the season really starts to show itself that this is a much larger scope. And I know some people don't like the inclusion of so many pre-existing characters. Like I know some people, cry nostalgia bait, and others will say it's like they would have preferred to just focus on Din. And I get that. And to a certain extent, I agree. I think that as the show went on, they did focus a little bit more on, or I think the flaws of focusing more on the wider galaxy, in relation to Din's journey, did it more of a disservice than a service. But I'll get to the Mandalorian season 3 and the issues that plagued that season, because that certainly had issues there. For now, though, for season 2, it was condensed enough, and I think good enough that it struck a decent enough balance that it was, I'd say, good overall, but certainly had its flaws. Like it definitely introduced a lot of pre-existing characters that maybe it didn't have to. Like you get like they bring back Fennec, who I was happy they brought her back because she was awesome in the one episode in season 1. But then they bring back Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka. You get a name drop of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and then Luke at the end of season 2. And that's a lot of pre-existing characters. And I don't think I'm forgetting anyone in that season, but I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And like they also brought back Cara Dune and Mayfield in episode 7, which, little side note there, that episode, season 2, episode 7, might be the best episode of the show, like of all 3 seasons. That episode is so good. Like even as just a standalone episode, like the plot setup is easy to understand. The characters, you can pretty much get how they operate immediately without even really having to watch. And that the performance that Bill Burr gives in that episode, like I don't mind Bill Burr's comedy, and I don't agree with everything he says. He can be a little too abrasive for my liking at that times, but him turning out that performance in season 2 was absolutely incredible. Like he is insanely good in that episode. And if you're going to watch just one episode out of this entire show, go watch that one because it is incredible. We also get a seismic charge from Slave One. I know it's not Slave One anymore, and they really renamed it, but it's always Slave One in my heart, the Boba Fett ship. And the seismic charge from that was like pure fan service, and I don't care because the seismic charge sound effect is so cool. But anyway, and to circle back to the actual show, I'm certainly someone who will like seal clap for fan service in Star Wars shows. I'm not going to deny that. So it was very cool to see Bo-Katan, especially with Katie Sackhoff playing her again, because she voiced her in the Clone Wars series. Should she have looked, basically the same exact age as she did in the Clone Wars when this is like 30 years later? Maybe not, but it was fine. I didn't care about that. And then also, of course, Ahsoka showing up halfway through the season, which I was so happy. I was so happy to see her show up in live action. I think Rosario Dawson did a great job. And I also introduced Morgan Elsbeth. She was a great villain, and she gets expanded on a lot in various shows since. She's been a great like secondary antagonist to Ahsoka in both the Ahsoka show and then also in Tales of the Empire. Like very great character. And then of course it got me so hyped when they name dropped Grand Admiral Thrawn, because you kind of knew if you watch Rebels that like he was gone, but he wasn't dead. Like there is no way they were killing him off like that. And so the fact that they were like, yeah, he's still alive, is great setup. Even if the payoff was, well, I'll get to Ahsoka in a little bit. But yeah, it's back to the Mandalorian, because I do tend to go on tangents. If you've watched any of my stuff, especially my podcasts, I will go on tangents. But yeah, season 2, overall, it was pretty solid. It just didn't quite have the magic that season 1 did. The expansion of the story in the sense of like having it be more like not just Din and Grogu, and a lot more trying to connect it to a bunch of other stuff, both new and old in terms of the lore, is understandable. And overall, it was good, but it's definitely like you can see where the cracks start to show. And I'm certainly not going to complain about Luke Skywalker's appearance in episode 8, because that whole scene with him in the hallway and the Dark Troopers was perfection, in my opinion. They should have had like someone they shouldn't have CGI'd his face. I'm going to say that. They should have just had Sebastian Stan play him, because Sebastian Stan can certainly pull off a Luke Skywalker look. But I'm still like having him show up and wreck house because he's Luke Skywalker. Luke god dang Skywalker. Yeah, that was awesome. Also, shout out Giancarlo Esposito. I love him in everything he does. He is fantastic, and he is fantastic in The Mandalorian as Moff Gideon, because Moff Gideon is such a fun villain. Like I love villains who are like take themselves seriously, but are also just a little bit corny in like how they act. Like like Gideon is clearly an egotist, and like he's someone who likes to hold all the cards and just like be superior to everyone. And he'll throw in a little bit of dramatic flair to it. Like his whole look is just a little bit over the top. And we see it more in season 3 with his like custom Beskar armor with like the Darth Maul horns and all that. Or well, I guess the Zabrak horns that he has on it. Like Gideon's just that little bit bombastic. And I feel like especially for an Imperial villain, you gotta have a little bit of flair to him. And it's not over the top. Like he's not, going on elaborate monologues all the time. He gives a few here and there, but like he's good enough where he's threatening, but he's also a little bit silly, in the best way possible. Like he's still threatening, but still silly. And he's a very enjoyable villain. And I always say that any good story needs a good villain. and Moff Gideon is a great villain. And he provided a very good overarching threat in season 2. So that I think that was definitely one of its strong suits, was Moff Gideon and his whole stick like deal going on. So after that, we move on to the Book of Boba Fett. I don't know why this is like really struggling to actually move around. Hang on, what if I... All right, I guess this is just going to be really laggy for some reason. I don't know why on a browser, but anyway. It's a good question of where I want to put this. I think it's going to go into D tier, but like a high D tier. And I'm really sad to put it here because I honestly liked it when I was watching it. It's like a C or like a D plus tier, C minus tier, essentially. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Because when it's like good, it's actually a really solid show. Unfortunately, the bad does tend to outweigh the good. Now, the good parts about it, Boba Fett is fun when he's actually being Boba Fett. Tamira Morrison is always a treat to watch when he's playing really anyone in Star Wars. And he clearly loves playing Boba Fett. And when Boba Fett's like actually being, the kind of ruthless bounty hunter that we all know and love, it's a really fun show. Like him in, what was it, episode, I think 3, when he finds out that the like bike gang had massacred all the Tusken Raiders who had taken him in, and like he takes Slave One and just guns them down in the middle of the desert. Like, just awesome. I know it's like a not so nice guy just killing a bunch of people, but like, come on, man. Like that was just the shot composition itself of like seeing Slave One come over the horizon and like drop out from the top of the screen with a sound effect going on and just start blasting everybody as they're driving away on their swoop bikes was like just perfection. It was so good. And like the final battle was also not bad at all. And also I should address kind of the elephant. Well, one of the elephants in the room. The fact that this like 2 episodes of this are literally just The Mandalorian season 2.5, are both enjoyably, but also sadly the best episodes of the show when it's literally not Boba Fett. Like he never shows up in those 2 episodes. But like the first episode where we follow Din on like the ring space station that looks like it's straight out of Halo, and like doing a bounty hunt with a Darksaber, and then going to meet the armorer and Paz Vizsla, like that whole thing was awesome. And then him going to Tatooine and getting the souped up N1 starfighter, like the flying shot with where he has the N1 completed and he's like flying through Tatooine, legitimately one of the most beautiful shots I've seen in like any Star Wars show. It was outside of Andor. And like that was just so well crafted. And I don't know why they put those 2 episodes in there and really messed up the pacing, but those 2 episodes were really good. And like you get the episode after that where Din goes to whichever planet it was, I don't remember, but where Luke's doing his Jedi Academy stuff and Ahsoka's there as well. And you get, the real fan servicey conversation between Ahsoka and Anakin, or not Ahsoka and Anakin, Ahsoka and Luke. And, that just warms my heart. Should Grogu have gone back with Din? Probably not, because that kind of undermined his decision at the end of Mandalorian season 2, but it's whatever. It's just unfortunate that the best episodes of Book of Boba Fett have nothing to do with Boba Fett, really. And you definitely can't ignore the bad. Like Boba Fett's characterization is all over the place. A lot of the Tatooine segments really drag on. His like I don't necessarily mind him trying to take over Jabba's place as like this warlord of Tatooine. It just was not handled very well. Like he's too pacifist, and then he's too ruthless at times. Largely too pacifist, though. Like he's not really ruthless enough. And he's only really like his ruthlessness only shows up when he's like pushed to the edge. And like a lot of the just minor characters in Tatooine itself are pretty forgettable. I certainly have to address the whole swoop bike gang thing and the like the cybernetic kids that are while certainly they could have a place in Star Wars, and like I'm not going to deny that at all, they just look kind of out of place on Tatooine, especially their like retro futuristic Vespas that they had that just looked way too clean and way too like they belong in something like Fallout compared to the griminess of Tatooine. And that whole chase sequence also was not shot very well. While I like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, I really like Dave Filoni and how like a lot of the stuff he does. One thing that I have seen a lot in the live action stuff is that they're not the best when framing action. To be honest, like outside of like lightsaber duels, really a lot of their big, large scale action shots leave a lot to be desired. And that's honestly something that even going into the Clone Wars, you look back at it, and I'm going to talk this a little bit more when I get to Obi-Wan Kenobi in a sec. It's a lot of the action is either way too condensed or just like a lot slower than it really should be. And for Book of Boba Fett, you can kind of see it in some of the action shots. Now, some of the other good things about this, Cad Bane, good bringing him back. First time we see him live action. That was awesome. Cad Bane's always super cool. We got more of, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who Timothy Olyphant plays in the show, Cobb Vanth. He was cool. I'm a big fan of Timothy Olyphant because I watched him in Justified, and Justified is a fantastic show. You should go watch that. So it's cool to see those two characters in the show. Should Cobb Vanth have survived getting just absolutely demolished by Cad Bane? Maybe not, but that's whatever. Star Wars is very hesitant on actually permanently killing off characters, so it's whatever. But yeah, it's overall this show is it has a lot of flaws to it. Flaws that really bring it down. It's one where I might honestly bump it up to C because there are shows that definitely are worse than this. But this is like, it's a low C, high D tier. And because there are very good moments in the show, there's just a lot more weak moments than there are strong. So next up, if I am looking at my timeline correctly, it is in fact Obi-Wan Kenobi. And unfortunately, my positivity is not going to return just yet because Obi-Wan Kenobi, where is the poster for it? Here it is unfortunately going to probably go into D tier. I have a lot of, or my thoughts on this are very similar to the Book of Boba Fett, where the highs in the show are very high. They're just pretty few and far between. And this one is more for Book of Boba Fett. I think the biggest issue for that was pacing because the show just seemed to have no idea what it wanted to be. Like it would be like 2 episodes, you would be flashbacks, then the next 2 episodes would be the Daimyo stuff. Then the next 2 episodes were Mandalorian season 2.5. Then it just had a very poor conception of how it wanted to frame its story. Obi-Wan, the show didn't quite have that problem. It's just that outside of really when Obi-Wan and Darth Vader were on the screen, the show was good. When basically everyone else was on the screen, it was not. It really struggled with its secondary characters. And it's unfortunate because a lot of them had good potential, especially Reva. Now I'm going to say, just put this, disclaimer almost. I'm not the biggest fan of Reva's character. However, the hate that the actress received for simply playing Reva was terrible. And I'm very ashamed of the fans who were basically racist towards her, because that is not what you should be doing. If you want to criticize the show, you should, if you have a problem with how the character is written, you should criticize the writers for doing it poorly, then criticize the actress for playing a character and actually acting out the lines she was given. I'm not going to say that Reva was the most compelling character in the world, but the actress deserved none of the hate that she got, because that was just stupid. Now, as for Reva herself, I like the Inquisitors, a lot of them are basically all former Jedi who are basically brainwashed. And I don't mind the idea of one of them basically having her whole identity, or her whole character arc being trying to get revenge on Darth Vader for stabbing her in the Jedi Temple during Order 66. We also get to the one of the major criticisms of a lot of live action Star Wars recently, of people getting stabbed and not dying. And while for some of them, mainly Sabine and Ahsoka, I can understand, like I will certainly agree that she should have survived. Or well, she did survive, and I'm like perfectly fine with her surviving. Reva getting stabbed, actually not once but twice in this show, and surviving both of them is pretty dumb, to be honest. Also, the Grand Inquisitor surviving getting stabbed by Reva in the first episode, not exactly, like come on, man, really. I don't mind Reva. Like I like the idea of her basically pretending to really be an Inquisitor and actually just trying to get, well, not really pretending, but like her ultimate goal rather than being an Inquisitor is actually trying to get revenge on Darth Vader. And honestly, the like very short fight that she has with Vader, where Vader just kicks her butt in like 2 seconds, that was really fun to watch because like there are levels in terms of power in the Star Wars universe. The Inquisitors are not on the same level as Darth Vader, and I'm glad they showed that Vader is one of the strongest characters in the galaxy at that point, and Reva stood no chance. But like she should not have survived 2 stab wounds with a lightsaber, with like very little medical treatment on either way. I will just say that right now, that was kind of dumb. And I like ultimately, I'm glad they didn't. Well, I mean, they kind of redeemed her, but not like fully. They probably shouldn't have redeemed her because she's not really a good person. But ultimately, I don't think Reva was the worst character in the show, but she wasn't a great character. And like parts of her story, especially like in the final section where like she tries to track down Obi-Wan to Tatooine, was probably could have done without that. I will also say the character whose name I'm blanking on, but the like former, like the ex-Imperial officer who's actually a rebel. She helps Obi-Wan through like most of the show. I don't remember her name. I'm blanking on it, but she was not the best character, unfortunately. She just kind of felt bland. I'm actually looking up her character's name right now because it's going just kind of escaping me. Estri, I think, is, or is that it? No, that's someone else. Hang on. Where maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't really matter too much. She just was. She felt kind of bland. Like she was just kind of there, and then she just kind of died. To be honest, like she was a sympathetic character, and like her, especially her interactions with little baby Leia. I mean, Leia's not a baby in this; she's like 6, I think. But like her reaction or interactions with her were good enough, but ultimately didn't really do enough to really save her from just being kind of a one-note character, I'd say. And this is one where the show just kind of felt like the pacing was just a real glacial crawl. Like it was cohesive, but it took a while for things to get going. And when they did, even then, a lot of it was just kind of eh. It was really like whenever Vader shows up, it was good. Like in, I think, episode 3, where Vader tracks down Obi-Wan to the one planet where they have their first encounter, and Vader's like walking through the town and like force chokes someone and like snaps their neck and then like drags them along the ground as they're dying, was like so unnecessarily brutal, but like totally in tune with Darth Vader. And like Vader, he's like a horror villain, like a slasher villain in that episode, and it was great. Like for as much as Disney has gotten wrong with Star Wars, whenever really Vader shows up in like anything they do, he is perfect. Like they get Darth Vader very well in Disney canon, and I don't know why they don't do it with like 90% of the other characters. That's not entirely true, but you get the idea. Like the Disney's version of Vader is very well done, and Obi-Wan Kenobi was no exception, in my opinion. Like he just felt very threatening and very imposing and almost unstoppable. And then their final duel, I think it was really only the second duel they had, but the final duel they had on the planet that I could not tell you the name of, to be honest, but where they had their like an actual extended duel where Obi-Wan's like able to hold his own and eventually get the better of Vader. Like that was awesome. That was incredibly fun to watch, incredibly emotional, like having basically allowing Obi-Wan to finally find peace in the fact that he left Anakin behind, and unintentionally created Darth Vader essentially, by the fact that like Vader essentially, confirming to Obi-Wan that Anakin Skywalker is dead and that Darth Vader killed him. That it's like, it's not really Obi-Wan's fault that he turned. It's like there was a lot more going on there, and it like giving Obi-Wan some sense of peace was really good to see. Also, we got some Jimmy Smits as Bail Organa. I love Jimmy Smits. He's awesome in everything he does, and getting to see him as Bail Organa was always really fun. And even if it was only for a few scenes in Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was still fun to watch. Also, little baby Leia. I just call her that because she's a child. But Kid Leia was very fun. She was very enjoyable. The actress, she did a great job at playing her. Because you could see a little bit of like the like take no nonsense type of like she can figure stuff out on her own type of Leia that we see in the original trilogy. But she's still also a kid in this, and it's very fun. I will also have to address the whole, I think it's episode 6, 5 or 6, when they infiltrate the Fortress Inquisitorius on planet Nur, where it's Obi-Wan, Leia, Obi-Wan and the woman whose name I'm forgetting go to rescue Leia when she got captured. Yeah, that episode was not good. I mean, it was cool to see Fortress Inquisitorius in live action and like some of the Easter eggs they had there, but like, wow, that episode was not directed well, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of things I could say wrong, like the whole lightsaber looking more like a baseball bat than an actual lightsaber when Obi-Wan was using it. The fact that 2 freaking snow speeders jumped through hyperspace to get there undetected, like, I don't know if they went through and like if they have hyperdrives in them, which they shouldn't. That just breaks the lore. Or if they came on like another ship, but like that was just not good, and the CGI was not good there either. Basically, just everything in that episode was very poorly directed, and it was just really unfortunate to see like the show overall just looked pretty poor from a production standpoint, and that was very surprising for a show based on Obi-Wan frickin' Kenobi, of all people. Like the budget was relative to some of the other shows pretty small, and just the production quality seemed pretty substandard compared to a lot of other shows that have been produced in Star Wars. And I was very disappointed at that. And then also just to touch on the action stuff that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and then I'll move on because I said most of what I need to say about Obi-Wan. It's in I think the 7th episode, like the penultimate episode, where they have where Vader and the Empire has cornered Obi-Wan and the rebel cell, and the stormtroopers go in and start having a big firefight with the rebels. And this is one where like I really could tell that Filoni had or it seemed like Filoni had involvement with it, because like if you watch the Clone Wars, he always has usually has his gunfights like way too close. Like gunfights being, and like everyone just kind of standing out in the open too, like very few people taking cover, and it's just like you're watching it and there's like blaster shots going everywhere, and it's like this gunfight should have been over 5 minutes ago, because they're like no one is taking cover. There's like 30 people on each side, which means a lot of fire going on, and like half of these people should be dead after the first volley. And because like these are trained Imperial stormtroopers, and like a lot of the rebels are like all kind of just farmers and stuff or whatever, but like it was just not shot well at all. And just one of the many complaints I had with like how the actual production quality of the show was just not it at all. And I was very disappointed to see. Like it was basically the show had its moments mainly with Obi-Wan and Vader, but basically everything else was pretty forgettable, and it was very disappointing. And like also shout out Hayden Christensen for coming back and playing Vader, and also Anakin in the flashback. He is so much fun to watch. And it's clear that he really likes playing Anakin Skywalker, and it was very cool to see him back for Obi-Wan, and he did a really good job when he was given the chance to, shine. So now, luckily, I get to be a lot more positive, because just a few months after Obi-Wan, we get to Andor Season 1. And where should I put this? Yeah, no surprise this is going in S tier. Andor is such a amazing show. It blows, honestly, everything else on this list out of the water. And I'm someone who likes pretty much all the other shows, but like the show is on another level. It's insane. I could honestly spend this whole episode just raving about how good Andor is. And you're not going to be surprised where I put Andor Season 2. But it's so good. Like for the criticisms, like it definitely starts off a little slow, and it can definitely be like a bit tough to follow in places. That's really all the criticisms I can level at this, because the production quality out the window, performances, some of the best I've seen ever. They're so good. Like the costuming, the lore, the dialogue. The dialogue is so good. Like you just watched episode 1 alone, and you get like characters who are basically never going to show up again still give like not Grammy, like Oscar worthy performances. I was trying to think of like what the TV equivalent to this would be, but I guess it's just, I think it's like Golden Globe, but even then it's not Golden Globe. But then I want Tony for some reason. Then I'm like, Tony's not, that's like Broadway stuff, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, yeah, like my thoughts immediately flicked to the Primor security sergeant, who's like Cyril Karn's boss in episode 1, who I think he was on like Game of Thrones or something like that as well. But like he has like 2 scenes, and there's one where he's talking with Cyril, and Cyril's like comes to him and he's like, "Hey boss, we have like 2 of our guys get murdered in a brothel district." And everyone's saying it's like, and like everyone's just trying to sweep it under the rug, but I think it's like we should investigate this. And the sergeant's like, this is gonna just be a whole thing that's gonna blow up in your face, Cyril. Don't do this. They were guys who were in a place they weren't supposed to be, drinking wine there that was too expensive for them, in a high-end brothel that was way too expensive for them. And it's I'm doing a very poor job at recounting this line, because I just don't remember the like words for it off the top of my head. But like, if you go and watch that scene, like it's just so well written, and you just immediately get a sense like this guy knows exactly what his job is. And you also get into like, at the same time, you get a perfect read on what Cyril's character is. That is like, it's one scene and you know exactly what you're going to expect out of it. And it's just so perfect. Like, and Cassian Andor is a good character. He's honestly not, sort of one of the weaker aspects, where like he's a good, Diego Luna plays him really well, and I'm not going to deny that, but like his character is more reactionary, and he gets better, I think, in season 2. It's just that like he's a good character. It's just that like everyone else is so like peak that being good by comparison is like noticeable. I will have to point out, for my own sake, the Narkina 5 arc, the prison arc in I think 7 episodes, 7, 8, and 9, I think is what it is. That arc is such a good series of television episodes. I was losing my mind every single step of the way. It was genuinely some of the best like media I've watched ever. And I know I'm sound hyperbolic, but I'm not. Like, it was so good. So well crafted. Andy Serkis gives off the performance of a lifetime. Like, just let him do more stuff without the mocap suit, because he's really good when he's just acting. And it's like, it does such a good job at illustrating how cruel the Empire can be. And like, just the fact that this is one prison out in the middle of nowhere. And the fact that like Andor gets sent there by mistake. Like he gets arrested by mistake, gets mistaken for someone else, gets sent to this absolute hellhole of a prison, like violating like every single article of the Geneva Convention imaginable type of prison. And it's so good at just showing what the Empire is down, like underneath everything, and like just how they operate. Like, it's a microcosm for how the Empire operates. And then also showing that, you know, Andor has the skills to, you know, be this sort of rebel instigator, rebel leader almost, as he slowly starts to piece things together and orchestrate the prison break. And then also the stinger at the end of the season where they show that the things that they were making go into the Death Star was like, oh, it's so poetic and it hurts my soul. And yeah, like this show is so good. Stellan Skarsgård, like, why he didn't win more awards, or like, I don't know if he won a single award, but why he didn't win awards from this, I don't understand, because he was fantastic as Luthen Rael in this. Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma was awesome. I think she has a better presence in season 2 than I think she does in season 1. But even then in season 1, she does a great job. Denise Go as Dedra Meero was also, oh my gosh, she's so good in the show. Like, she's so good at her job and so frighteningly amoral. Like I was watching like I think it was like two philosophy for professors, or like two college professors. Like one of them was a philosopher and one of them was like someone else. But they were recapping season 2, and they were talking about her in season 1 and how it's like I might also be confusing this with like a completely other reaction, but I feel like this was them. But it was one of the many reaction videos I was watching on Andor. But it was like you see Dedra in season 1, and you initially you start to root for her a little bit in season 1, where like she's kind of being beaten down by the system almost, where like it's clear she's just trying to do her job and do it well, but she's being held back by a lot of office politics essentially in the ISB. And like you start to root for her a little bit when she's like sparring with Supervisor Blevin in the season, and it's like, she just seems like someone who's trying to do her job, and you almost start to root for her a little bit. And then it's like when she captures Bix and starts torturing her, and like you can see like that's when the real Dedra and like the smile starts showing up. It's like, oh no, this woman is insane, and she is just a sadist. And it's like, no, you do not root for Dedra. She is a terrible, terrible person, and yet at the same time, she's incredibly compelling. Should also highlight the ISB scenes, because like I was not going into the show, I was not expecting to fall in love with watching office politics in basically the Empire's version of the Gestapo. And yet the dialogue in that stuff and the performances, especially from the actor who I don't remember the name of, but who plays Major Partagast, just blew my mind at how good, like that, like it was just so well done. And it's like, I obviously don't want to work for the ISB because they're terrible, but it's like, I would want to work under Partagast because he just seems like a good boss. And like, he seems like someone who you would want to do a good job for, because he's so compelling, and he's competent to an extent. Like we see more in season 2 that like he has his flaws to him, and how he operates, but like he gives his subordinates like a chance to prove themselves. He'll allow politics in his circle to an extent, but like if it gets too far, he will start to like clamp down on things. Like he rewards ingenuity, he rewards creative thinking, but he's also not one to like, just let people off the hook and like just go out unsupervised. Like he's such an incredible character, and like you see a lot of this in the start of season 2 especially, but like the juxtaposition of the ISB and like how efficient and organized and practiced they are and how they operate compared to everything we see from the rebels throughout pretty much most of Andor is very deliberate and very well crafted. Of like, the rebels are so disorganized 90% of the time, and yet there's still a major threat that the Empire is not taking seriously. And it's one of the hundreds of things you could say that the show does right. And once again, I could go on and on and on about how good Andor is, but I will move on because this episode is running far too longer than I would like at the moment. So I'm going to try and speed things up a little bit. So after Andor is, I think, Mandalorian season 3, which is right here. Now, Mandalorian season 3, I wish I didn't have to put this in C tier. I'm putting it above Book of Boba Fett, but it has a lot of flaws. Now, the main flaw, I think, from what I remember, is that this is basically 2 shows in one. This is not only The Mandalorian Season 3, this is also Rangers of the New Republic. Now, if you don't know, Rangers of the New Republic was a planned show that was set in the sort of like Mandalorian universe, with I think the main star being Cara Dune, who was the Alderaanian rebel shock trooper who assisted Din and Grogu and the gang in season 1 and 2. And she was kind of the muscle, essentially. And from what I know, the show was supposed to like follow her and like a lot of the New Republic and how they were doing things. I don't think we know too much about the specifics, but from what I've seen, so the show did not end up happening. I know at least part of the reason why, or at least I'm pretty sure part of the reason why, was that Gina Carano, the actress behind Cara Dune, was let go by Disney for, I know at least one of the reasons, I don't know if this was the sole reason, but one of the reasons was that she posted on, I think, her Instagram or something, like on her social media, was basically she was an anti-masker during the height of COVID, which was obviously a big no-no for a big corporation like Disney. I'm not going to go into the politics of all that and stuff, but she was let go, and her character has no longer appeared in any Star Wars media since, and the show was dropped after that. So I'm assuming there's probably some other stuff going on behind the scenes as well, but that was the main, or that's what I think the main reason was. Now, unfortunately, it seemed like a lot of what the Rangers of the Republic was going to do in its show was going to tie into The Mandalorian Season 3. So they tried to cram some of that into Mandalorian Season 3 in an attempt to like make the overall plot coherent. Unfortunately, it did kind of the opposite. So like if you're watching the show and wondering why it just randomly splits off to New Republic stuff that has nothing to do with Mandalorian, that's why. And while I don't think those episodes are necessarily bad, like it was cool seeing Tim Meadows in Star Wars for like an episode, it definitely messed up the pacing a lot. And that was also not the only flaw in season 3. The season seemed to like be really inconsistent on like what it wanted to do with Din, Bo-Katan, and the Darksaber. And I'm not the biggest fan of having it just like Din kind of get hyped as the Mandalorian, even if like quote unquote, or like the Mandalorian, or like the leader of the Mandalorians essentially. And trying to like he was obviously pushing against it for a lot of it, but you could make a case of like trying to bring him around to like a leadership role. I'm not the biggest fan of him just kind of finding a loophole and giving it up to Bo-Katan, and just kind of like hand wave it away, and then only to then destroy the Darksaber and just kind of gloss over everything. It was definitely, it could have been handled better. Moff Gideon was still very fun in the show. His base on Mandalore was cool, and seeing the Praetorian Guards was pretty neat as like a tie-in to the sequel trilogy. We got a glimpse of Admiral Pelion in his little conference with the Shadow Council, which is cool. But ultimately, it was one where the show just felt a bit too scatterbrained for its own good, and it tried to do way too much. And if they made the series like 16 episodes or even like 12 episodes, I think it could have been done better, because it just felt like the pacing, because they were trying to cram 2 shows into one, really messed things up. And if they had more time to really flesh things out, and I think give a lot of the characters more opportunity to just like give the characters and the plot more room to breathe, rather than just kind of rush through what felt like a lot of it. I think that show could have been, or this season could have been saved from being kind of mid, essentially. And it's unfortunate, because I really like The Mandalorian, and obviously we're getting the movie. I don't know if we're getting a season 4 of the show though, and if that's the case, it's unfortunate to see the show go out on kind of a bit of a whimper. And yeah, so I think I could probably say more, but this episode's getting way longer than I would like, so I'm gonna kind of keep speeding through things here. So after that, we go to Ahsoka, I believe, and that is this one. Ahsoka, I'm going to put into B tier, because this show, I've kind of like, when I finished it, and basically everything I've said since, is that this show is a solid, like at best, a solid 7 out of 10. It has, I don't think any of the highs are like, outside of some of the lightsaber duels, I'd say. The show doesn't quite have the peaks that like Mandalorian, especially Andor, and even Obi-Wan, I'd say like the peaks of Obi-Wan are higher than Ahsoka. However, I think overall Ahsoka is like consistently good enough that when it doesn't really have any big, or well, very few, I'd say, big like dips in quality. It's overall, the quality overall is pretty consistent. Like it's consistently solid to okay. But I do wish it was better, unfortunately. And I certainly have my gripes with this. I'm not a fan of making Sabine a Jedi, to be honest. She didn't really need to be one. I think it's cool to see her be a Force user, but like she's already a Mandalorian and a prominent rebel. Like she didn't really need to also be a Jedi. I do like her dynamic with Ahsoka, and I actually don't mind the fact that they introduced them at this point in the series, having already gone through a bit of a schism. I thought that was interesting to see. Like, yeah, they're friends, but their relationship at the start of season 1 is still a bit frosty. And I don't mind showing that Ahsoka is not the best at teaching, which honestly kind of makes sense. Like her one major teacher was Anakin, who had a lot of baggage and probably didn't really teach her the best. And I mean, he had to teach her during wartime, and she grew up learning Jedi ways during the Clone Wars, which is not ideal. So her being kind of overprotective is very, very understandable. And I don't mind that. Unfortunately, her Rosario Dawson's performance, and I think the direction she was given, was not quite as good as I would have liked. She was a bit too stoic and too just kind of crossing her arms and being a bit cryptic a lot of the time. And I know she's supposed to be emotionless because she's, I know she's not a Jedi, but she's basically a Jedi. But it's still I would have liked to seen a bit more flair to her, because she was I guess she's matured a lot since her Clone Wars days, but she was very enjoyable and very, snippy and very energetic when she was younger. And I wouldn't have minded to see a little bit more of that. And I think that was honestly, that was one of my biggest issues with the show, was that Ahsoka and Sabine, they were good, but could have been done a little bit better, in my opinion. The overall plot was also okay, to be honest. It would definitely, I don't think, was not its strong suit. It was good enough, but it definitely dragged in a few spots, and it was definitely not the best aspect of it. One thing that I think was the best aspect of it was Baylan Skoll, played by the late great Ray Stevenson. I'm so sad he passed away right before the show aired, because he delivered such an awesome performance. Baylan being this fallen Jedi turned mercenary who is just both a physical and just a physical presence, and also just an emotional presence as well. You can feel the grief in his heart, and just the fact that he is so done with everything. He's beaten down almost, and basically the only thing left to him that are important now is Shin and his money, and the job, essentially. He whatever honor or dignity he had as a Jedi is long gone. And yet he still carries this almost noble type of grace in him, that he almost demands respect without having to actually demand it, and it's very, very impressive. Anytime he fights is awesome to see, because he gives just enough amount of energy in his attacks and his movements, but he doesn't need to be overwhelming. He has just a natural aura and a natural power to him. His duel with Ahsoka in episode 4 or 5, I don't remember which one, but the midpoint of the season, essentially, was so well crafted. The choreography for this show was a good highlight. Very well done. And his fight, the different styles they had, and the homage to a lot of samurai inspired and Japanese inspired sword fights. It was very clear and very cool to see. And Baylan's style of calculated yet incredibly overpowered strikes was so fun to watch, because you just don't see that enough, I feel in live action Star Wars, because outside of really Darth Vader. But even then, Baylan and Darth Vader's styles you can tell they are different enough that it makes it enjoyable. They're different enough, essentially. I will also, of course, have to address Grand Admiral Thrawn. He is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, so I was grinning like a madman when I saw him. I was very happy to see them bring back Lars Mikkelsen, who voiced him in Star Wars Rebels, who did an interesting and different take compared to what we'd seen a lot of in his voice roles in Star Wars Legends. A lot of what we'd heard of Thrawn, how various different voice actors voiced Thrawn in audiobooks or games for Thrawn, was a lot more gruff and deep voice, and not necessarily aggressive, but a lot more commanding, forcefully commanding in his voice. Whereas Lars Mikkelsen's portrayal of Thrawn in Rebels and also in Ahsoka is a lot more soft-spoken, yet still very commanding. And I thought it was an interesting take on it, and I think it's a really good take, to be honest. And hearing him in that, and also hearing Mark Thompson's version of Thrawn because he honestly did Thrawn in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, but and he did that in his like older voice, like pre Lars Mikkelsen voice. But now hearing him switch to the Lars Mikkelsen tone, which he does really well, I might add. Like I'm impressed at how good Mark Thompson is at mimicking Lars Mikkelsen's Thrawn voice. Is like I actually like it more than the old Thrawn. Like I think the soft spoken yet like a little bit threatening all the time and very calculating, I think fits the character a lot more. And Lars Mikkelsen and Ahsoka, like it helps that Lars Mikkelsen is like 6'6" or something like that. Like he's really tall, and it gives Thrawn a really just naturally intimidating presence. And like his like the entire shot of him showing up for the first time in the show of the Chimera that's like partially like in like it's in disrepair but like partially repaired by this unknown metal, this like unknown gold metal, and then like all the night troopers just chanting Thrawn as he strides through, like just perfect. I don't care if it's like kind of cheesy, it's so perfect. I love watching Thrawn just kind of hype himself up, and it's so cool. And like every time he's on screen, he's just a treat to watch. And it was so good. Really the only issue I had with sort of like the last stretch was the typical kind of plot armory that was really prevalent in Rebels, and the fact that the Night Troopers and Thrawn get really hyped up, but like going up against Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka, like they just don't do anything, to be honest. Like I know Thrawn eventually wins because he gets away, but like it was kind of disappointing to see the Night Troopers just kind of get their fade run by the gang. I mean, I get that they're going up against 3 Jedi essentially, but like they could have given up a little bit more of a fight. Also Ezra, I forget the actor's name who plays Ezra, but he was awesome. Like he gives such like just peak Ezra performance of like he's a little bit more wiser now because it's been like 10 years or so since he disappeared, but like he's still very goofy and like very much flying by the seat of his pants, and that's just peak Ezra. And it was very fun. But like the performances in this show, I will say for like basically every part of it, they were very good. Like Shin was a really fun little addition to the cast as well. Morgan Elsbeth was really fun. Hera was cool to see in live action, even if she probably could have been done a little bit better. She was probably one of the weaker performances, but the performances I'd say were the strong suit of this show. It was just the plot and some of the action, like the non-lightsaber parts of the action could have been done better. But overall, it's a show that I think was better than it was worse. Now then, after that, it was, unfortunately, The Acolyte. Now, this one is pretty easily going into D tier. I actually was debating on creating an F tier for this. But even then, it's same with Obi-Wan Kenobi, where overall it's not a good show. The Acolyte's actually really not a good show. But there are still some good things about it. And I'm not going to just try and rag on The Acolyte. I'm going to try and focus on the strengths of it, because I'll just say right now. So The Acolyte has the plot was not the best. It was a little simple and then kind of all over the place at the same time. The main characters, Osha and May, were the weakest part of the show, to be honest. Mandela Stenberg did not give a good performance, unfortunately. She gave a really stiff performance, if I'm being honest. But I could see when it felt like when she was actually giving emotion to it, especially as May, there was definitely something there. It just felt like more often than not, she was just being a lot more rigid and gave a lot of the same facial expressions and a lot of this very bland performance overall that really hampered the show when it was centered around her and her twin characters that she played. There's a lot of it that's just pretty rough about the show. A lot of the supporting cast was just kind of it's really the plot though that was just really not done well. The pacing was pretty bad, and the overall mystery was having it kind of get revealed and then get unrevealed, and it just was not good, to be honest. What I will say is that the performance of Master Soul, whose name I do not remember off the top of my head, but the Korean actor who was also in Squid Game, I believe. I think actually he played the main character in Squid Game, if I remember correctly. He did a fantastic job. He was easily the best part about this show. And I wish we could see more of him because unfortunately his character got killed off at the end of the season. But yeah, it was he did an excellent job, and I'm very happy with how he performed in the show. The lightsaber choreography was also legitimately some of the best I've seen in Star Wars in a good while. Like anytime there was actually an actual lightsaber fight, I chewing on popcorn. Like this is oh, there's an actual good show under this. Like the fight with Kamir and the Jedi in the midpoint of the show was a little clunky, but like overall pretty enjoyable. And watching Kamir just kind of wreck house was really fun. And getting a Cortosis, bit of Cortosis look in live action was cool with his helmet. And like really just anytime there was a lightsaber fight, it was very well choreographed. And I was like, I don't know who they brought on to, choreograph the fights there, but if they could keep them around, that would be pretty cool, to be honest, because they did a good job. It was really just basically everything else about the show was pretty rough. I wish we got to see more of Master Endora because I just wanted more Carrie-Anne Moss in Star Wars, and it would have been cool. I know we got some of her in flashbacks, but like it would have been cool to see a bit more of her. And unfortunately, it was like having a plot as bad as it was, and having like a fundamental misunderstanding of how Star Wars morality and how the light side and dark side works. And the fact that it is very much a binary thing. Like you can some people certainly try and make, evil Jedi and good Sith, but like overall, it's been pretty consistent that the light side is good. Like if you are a Jedi, you are supposed to be an overall good person. Like if you do bad things as a Jedi, chances are you're going to fall to the dark side. And the dark side is not a good thing. Like it is a shortcut. It is a drug. It is like everything wrong in how you go about your life. So trying to go rooting for the dark side character, which is what the showrunner, what she tried to make the show be, is like, I want to have the main character follow the dark side and have that be a good thing, essentially, is not good, essentially. Like that's not how Star Wars works. Like you can do that with other series. I'm fine with that. It's just not how the Force and how the light side and dark side has for basically all of Star Wars been established. Like that's just not how it works. And it's very unfortunate because there are I can certainly see good things in the show, and I can certainly see that there are ideas in the show that weren't quite realized but are good overall. It's just that the bad really outweighs the good. And it's very unfortunate. So next up, we get to Skeleton Crew, the second to last show. And I'm not sure if I want to put this in B tier. I might actually put this in A tier. This is a really fun show. It's not Andor levels or even Mandalorian season 1 levels of peak, I'd say, but it's just a really fun, simple little show. I went into it with pretty low expectations. I think with basically everyone. But I expected Goonies in Star Wars, and I got Goonies in Star Wars, to be honest. You look at the trailer and you kind of watch the first episode and you get a pretty good understanding of it's going to be some kids, coming of age story with some kids going around doing some wacky adventures in the galaxy with this mysterious, pirate guy played by Jude Law, going along for the ride. And that's exactly what you get. And it was really fun. The kids were a lot more enjoyable than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting them to be bad. I just wasn't expecting them to be as much of a, I wasn't expecting their performances to be as compelling as they were. The girl who had the tech visor, I couldn't tell you the name of the kids at this point. It's been a year at this point, and the names have just gone in and out at this point. But the girl with the visor who has some cybernetics in her, I think she was such a good character. The episode that focused on her was man, my heartstrings were tugging at that point. And it was just very fun and enjoyable and really simple. You didn't really need to watch much else in terms of Star Wars to really get an idea of how most of the series was going to go. Jude Law was also really fun where you weren't really sure if you could trust him or not. Cause he seemed basically everyone was telling the kids, do not trust this guy. He is going to betray you. But it's you really wanted to trust him because he was pretty charismatic and was compelling enough, but then at the same time, it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't trust him. And then the reveal that he was force sensitive and he was probably a youngling who survived Order 66 was like, that was a cool twist. And like him getting an ancient lightsaber was pretty cool. And like really the whole, and then the mystery with the add-in that they're on, Nick Frost also being like a one-legged or like a peg-legged one-eyed droid named Smee was like chef's kiss. It was just a really fun show overall. And it's like, it's one where I think it's pretty accessible to a lot of fans, and it's one that you don't really need to watch any of the other shows for, or any other movies. And it's pretty harmless overall. Like it's not really trying to do too much, but overall it's one that for the flaws that it has, I think they're pretty few and far between. I just don't think that like it doesn't quite reach the same, levels that Mandalorian season 1 or Andor does, because it's good. It's just not. It's like an 8.5 out of 10, I'd say, compared to like the 8.5 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and then of course also 10 out of 10. I'm not sure if I'm putting season 1 or season 2 higher. This might be recency bias, but I think I'm going to put season 2 higher, because I'm going to reiterate what I said about Andor season 1. Andor season 2 is peak. It is so unbelievably good, and it outclasses everything else on the list. Despite a lot of these being pretty good overall, these shows are just, these 2 seasons are just on another level. Like even just alone, the Gorman Massacre and like that stretch of episodes, just so good. Like that I think it's episode 7 of season 2, the Gorman Massacre episode, was like, I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, because it was just watching a train wreck in slow motion, and it was just set up and built up so well, and the eventual fall down during the massacre was like just hurt to watch, and it's like you can tell where it could be prevented, but at that point it was like it could not be prevented, and oh my, it was so good. We also got Ben Mendelsohn showing up in this season as Director Krennic, and he was such a fun addition to this show. I raved about it a little bit in my talk and in my podcast episode recently on the Imperial Trilogy, the Thrawn Imperial Trilogy, but Ben Mendelsohn is such a treat in this show, because Krennic is someone who has a very inflated ego himself. And I said it in my podcast episode, but like in Rogue One, when we see him, he is like 2 or 3 rungs down on the totem pole. In Andor, he is at the top, essentially. Like there is no one above him at this point, and he is going full force into just being an absolute diva, and it is so much fun. Like his conference with the Imperials was like his rant about Calcite. It was so fun and so entertaining, and it's like you can tell it's like half the room is just completely into it, and like, yes, this guy is like, I want to follow him to the ends of the earth, and the other half is just like, oh my god, why do I have to listen to this idiot? And it's just like, this is the Empire. Like these people are sometimes smart, but oftentimes just so full of themselves that they're just like, they just can't see things half the time, and it's so good. Once again, literally everyone in the cast is great. Stellan Skarsgård, I'm not sure if I think he might be a little bit better in season 1 and season 2, but he's really good in season 2 here. Genevieve O'Reilly just knocks it out of the park as Mon Mothma in this one. I think Diego Luna does a bit better as Andor in this season. Denise Go and Kyle Soller as Dedra Meero and Cyril Karn are just so good. I could rave about this show for forever. But I'm gonna probably stop here, because this episode is long enough as it is, and I think it's like getting close to an hour, and I was hoping this would be more around the 30-minute mark, but oh well. I am someone who tends to ramble, especially when it comes to Star Wars. But yeah, this is my tier list for Star Wars shows as of end of 2025. Didn't think it was going to end up being completely even in terms of where they all are. Again, I could probably move some of these around. Skeleton Crew could be like a high B tier or low A tier, but I think there's good. Same with Book of Boba Fett, it could be a high D tier, but I think low C tier is good enough. But I think this is where they should end up. And overall, it's there are flaws in all of these. There are also strengths in everything. Overall, I think it's more enjoyable to try and find the strengths in things than try and look for flaws. And for some shows like Andor, the like just sitting back and just enjoying the ride is a lot more fun than trying to nitpick. So that'll do it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I would love some engagement down in the comments. Share your thoughts on what you think the best Star Wars show, or you could say best Star Wars movie, because I might do another tier list on the movies or the animated shows. Not that I've watched all the animated shows yet, because I've not watched Resistance, so I can't comment on that. But anyway, like if this does well, or if I'm in the mood, I might do another one like this. But yeah, this was one that was not trying to be as long as it was, but it wound up being that anyway. So yeah, once again, thank you very much for watching. Please tune in next episode, or next time, probably be Wacky Warships, or not. That's my podcast series that I've only done one episode on. Anyway, I'm rambling again. I'm very sorry. But yeah, next episode on my channel should be Warship Wednesdays, if I can edit it in time. It might just wind up being a Warship Wednesdays on a Thursday, if I'm being honest. But yeah. That should be next up. And then also my Prime 4 Let's Play is going strong. Probably going to be recording some more after this episode goes up. And yeah, so please do whatever it is you want to do. But yeah, liking and subscribing is free, so I love some of that. Thank you very much for watching.